Hello, my name is Thomas. Welcome to British Culture. Albion never dies. We are back to the Alphabet of Britishness. Again, I do like to do requests and demands, and this was a demand. Lots of people have asked me to do this. I'm often a bit slow to get to these because I'm asked to do all kinds of random topics that I hadn't thought about. I often have to do a lot of research, and when my life's up in the air, it can be quite difficult, and my life has been up in the air lately. However, I am always very, very happy to get to it, precisely because I have to do a lot of research, look into things I hadn't really thought about before, and have a think about things I haven't thought about before. So thank you very much to everyone who's messaged me, particularly Kyle Barbeau of Mr. Easy Smiles and Expensive Watches on Instagram, and David Nix, who emailed me these suggestions. So between them, we have three topics: underground, umbrella, and upper class. So underground was suggested by both gentlemen I referred to, Kyle and David. They wanted me to cover underground, and I've lately been taking the underground more than I ever have in my life, particularly thanks to Pete Brooker and a chap named AJ Chowdhury, who's both of them have been encouraging me to travel about London, explore it a little more, and go there a little more. So I've gotten more and more used to this thing, the London Underground, also just known as the Tube because of the shape of the tunnels. It is the oldest underground train system in the world. So I had a quick look at the history on the Encyclopedia Britannica, always a good source, and it says the London Underground was proposed by Charles Pearson, a city solicitor, as part of a city improvement plan shortly after the opening of the Thames Tunnel in 1843. After 10 years of discussion, Parliament authorised the construction of 3.75 miles, 6 kilometres of underground railway between Farringdon Street and Bishop's Road, Paddington. Work on the Metropolitan Railway began in 1860 by cut and cover methods, that is, by making trenches along the streets, giving them brick sides, providing girders or brick arch for the roof, and then restoring the roadway on top. On January the 10th, 1863, the line was opened using steam locomotives that burned coke and later coal. Despite sulphurous fumes, the line was a success from its opening, carrying 9.5 million passengers in the first year of its existence. How dark and smoky it must have been, but it led the way, for London, as London's underground network expanded with steam trains and also, I believe, pedestrian tunnels. It's quite a warrenous city, London. When I have a look around, I'm always struck by how warrenous it is. But of course, places all around the world followed suit. So whilst I haven't been particularly familiar with the London Underground, over the last 7 years, I've been very, very familiar with the Hong Kong MTR, their underground and overground system, which is obviously closely related to the London one. Unsurprising, Hong Kong was a British colony, and when you tap in, if you're not using your contactless bank card, then in London you have your Oyster card, and Hong Kong has the Octopus, and I'm much more used to using the Octopus card. So I think I refer to it as an octopus card, and London was like, wrong sea animal. And they're right, it was the wrong sea animal. London is the oldest. Beijing right now is the longest. Shanghai is thought to have the largest number of travellers in the world, and China has the largest number of underground and metro systems in the world. As a country, 46. The one I'm even more familiar with, more than London, more than Hong Kong, is Shenzhen, because I lived in Shenzhen for 6 years and I took the underground pretty well every single day. I think there were occasionally I'd manage to get one day in the week where I would deliberately not travel on it because I travelled on it all the time. It is extremely noisy, so I had the headphones to cover the ears, try and help protect my ears. But it is a huge metro system, and one which expanded. It has far more metro lines now than it did when I first arrived. But I was always fascinated by the fact the Shenzhen Metro has many signs not allowing balloons. No balloons are allowed. And I used to ask my Chinese friends, why do you think that is? And I just love the different suggestions. Everyone thought it was reasonable. Everyone had a suggestion. Very rarely did I hear the same suggestion twice. One of them seemed sensible to me. If a balloon pops, people might panic. It would cause a stampede. That made a great deal of sense. One person said, well, there's safety doors, and then you have the train, and if it goes between the two sets of doors, then it will get into, the top of the carriage, the roof where you have all the electric wires, and so it might make everything fuse out. I wasn't sure about that. One of them, which I found the most hilariously obviously wrong, is that the tube pressure, just the cars going along, will always make balloons pop. They'll go boom every single time. 100% of the time, no balloon can ever survive a trip in any metro. I don't believe that's right. One person was suggesting it's poison gas. That what if a terrorist gets into the metro with a balloon and it's full of poison gas? And then I asked, well, how much poison can you get into like an ordinary balloon? And I did ask that to a room full of engineers. So then they're getting into how to distribute poison, how much poison gets in, what can be the air pressure of a normal balloon, when will the special material of a balloon that can contain huge amounts of poison become rarely obvious, and all sorts. But what this meant is that, it's a city, there are children will go in with balloons, and they do get confiscated. So sometimes you'll see, a battery or security guards sitting there. In more recent times there have been metal detectors at most tube stops, and you have to x-ray your bags, and there's a lot of security people there, and sometimes they'll just be holding a children's balloon. It does look quite funny. And sometimes it's the lady security guards who are young girls, and they do look very, very pleased to be holding a balloon. And I went through with my then girlfriend, now wife, Stephanie, and the security guard I think called her over and gave her a balloon as we were leaving, and obviously the lady security guard just thought, girl, you need to have a balloon. Just handing them out. So yeah, thanks to their no balloons policy, we got a balloon. Anyway, Shenzhen is a huge, extensive metro, started 20 years ago, 2004, and already, I say, getting bigger and bigger. I remember I was there when there was the big typhoon, supposedly category 14. Previously the maximum category had been 10, but it flooded one bit of the underground, and I went the next day and it was so clean. It worked throughout the night to completely clean it, and after that you get sandbags everywhere because you do get the rainy season. Anyway, back to London. The Shenzhen Metro I don't think I've ever seen in a film, but the London Underground I have seen many times in films. Probably the one that comes to my mind, first or second, would be Skyfall, where you've got James Bond chasing the villain Silver all throughout the London Underground, and then they slide down that bit where there's the two escalators, and I've been surprised how many British fans really hate it, because of course in real life there are bollards to stop you sliding down, and occasionally you see videos on TikTok, Instagram, Douyin, wherever, of people who are trying to slide down the middle, because it seems an obvious thing to do, but that's why there are bollards and people crash into them. My view has always been that given that Silver has clearly planned this escape quite meticulously, he starts out in a glass cage and then there's some hole in the floor, and he's even able to detonate a bomb to make a train go through the perfect bit of wall. He probably just removed the bollards. So it's never particularly struck me. And so that's probably the first or second. Let's admit it. Probably the first thing I think of with the London Underground and movies is Star Wars, Rogue One, because there's an Imperial facility, and it looks fantastic, and it looked really real. And the reason it's real is because it's Canary Wharf, and yeah, now I've seen it, it's like, yeah, it's really obvious, it's Canary Wharf. They're running around in London. That was great. Sliding doors, I feel, is the compulsory mention, and of course there is an underground that's featured in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, and I think Thor, The Dark World, one of the Marvel superhero films. Thor materialises in Charing Cross Station and then just travels 3 stops to Greenwich, because movies are magic. Another one to annoy the people living in London. But that's movies. Okay, the second topic. This one was just from Kyle Babbo, Mr. Easy Smiles and Expensive Watches on Instagram, and he suggested the topic of umbrella. And this one's been rolling around in my mind for quite a while. He did suggest it quite a while ago. I've been thinking about it for a good long time. I was thinking, how on earth can I talk about it? My first thought was the first Polish dictionary, which was published in 1746 and had the definition of a horse. Everyone knows what a horse is. I learned that on No Such Thing as a Fish, the podcast for the TV show QI. It's just the researchers talking about their fun facts that they come out with for the quiz. But yeah, the definition of an umbrella. Everyone knows what an umbrella is, but no, I thought, what is the actual definition? So I thought I'd look up the Encyclopedia Britannicas, because they tend to be a bit more all-encompassing than mere dictionaries. Umbrella, a portable, handheld device that is useful for protection against rain and sunlight. The modern umbrella consists of a circular fabric or plastic screen stretched over hinged ribs that radiate from the central pole. The hinged ribs permit the screen to be opened and closed so that the umbrella can be carried with ease when not in use, apart from their considerable weight, of course. Okay, I'll go into more of the history. Umbrellas in ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, China and India were used to protect important persons from the sun. Not just city workers against the rain. Anyway, they were large, often, and held by bearers, and they served as marks of honour and authority for the one being protected by the bearers. The ancient Greeks helped introduce umbrellas into Europe as sunshades, and the Romans used them to protect against the rain. So, good to know they've been used to protect us against rain for around 2,000 years, and of course we know that because they appear in Asterix and Obelix, the cartoon or the comic book series that I enjoy very, very much, and he has them with the ancient Gauls, saying that they carry umbrellas just in case the sky falls down on our heads. Anyway, the use of umbrellas disappeared in Europe during the Middle Ages, but reappeared in Italy by the late 16th century, where they were regarded as marks of distinction for the Pope and clergy. By the 17th century, the use of the umbrella had spread to France. By the 18th century, they were common throughout Europe. The small, dainty umbrella for shading women's faces from the sun became known as a parasol, and was a standard element of fashionable women's outdoor attire for about 2 centuries. The traditional construction of umbrellas using cane ribs was replaced in the 1850s by modern umbrellas using a very light but strong steel frame. Men in the West began carrying umbrellas for personal use in the mid-19th centuries, and men's umbrellas were generally black. However, they have become more and more colourful over time. So, for example, for those who need their James Bond content, there is the National Gallery, and the National Gallery again appears in Skyfall, where James Bond looks at this painting, the Fighting Temeraire, and talks about it being the bloody great ship. So if you want an umbrella with a bloody great ship on it, then you can go to the National Gallery website, where it costs a mere £25 to have a bloody big ship on an umbrella. However, checking tonight, I see that they are currently out of stock. But there we go, there's a James Bond umbrella, one with the Fighting Temeraire, or Fighting Temeraire, however you choose to say it. Anyway, who invented the umbrella? Well, I don't know if in the West we have any strong ideas about who invented the umbrella, but the Chinese claim that they invented it, and the supposed inventor, or at least her husband, is a deity, Lu Ban, who lived about 507 to 444 BC, was a Chinese architect, master carpenter, maybe a structural engineer, who knows back then, definitely an inventor in the Zhou dynasty, and is revered as a Chinese deity of builders, contractors, and so on. So supposedly he helped invent the saw, he invented the square, makes sense, the planer, the drill, the shovel, and an ink marking tool of some kind. However, he loved working outside so much, his wife is credited with inventing the umbrella in order to permit him to work in inclement weather outside. There you go. Go work in the rain. So Lu Ban, he is a deity, but his wife is the one who invented the umbrella, according to the Chinese. Are there any famous umbrellas? Well, I had a quick Google because I thought of one, and then mine didn't appear in any list that I found online. Every other list that I found online started with Mary Poppins. It seems to be most people's first choice. And then Singing in the Rain with Gene Kelly, which I really liked. Part of the reason I really like it, of course, Gene Kelly is American, so I always like it when it is a very British thing, an umbrella. It was suggested to me, but of course there's other people in other countries using umbrellas. It's a very Chinese thing. It can be a very American thing, maybe if you're singing in the rain. So yeah, Mary Poppins, Gene Kelly. Of course, in Kingsman, he's got his kind of umbrella, his bulletproof umbrella, which is the point where I was thinking of Patrick Macnee in The Avengers, the 60s British TV show. She also had Diana Rigg and various others who would circulate around in the Bond world later on. But his has umbrella, which is a scabbard. He draws out a sword from it. But no, the most famous umbrella that I was thinking of was Digby's from the movie A Bridge Too Far. Of course, in real life, Major Alison Digby Tatum Water, born in 1917, died in 1993, generally just known as Digby. He was a British Army officer who fought in the Second World War and was famed for wearing a bowler hat and carrying an umbrella into battle. The movie, The Bridge Too Far, is an epic of a film, I think very, very worth watching if you haven't. Came out in 1977 and kind of tells the events of Operation Market Garden, the operation to try and capture Arnhem Bridge, and plenty of military podcasts are out there if you're interested in these things. So I thought I'd just, quite honestly, quickly read from Wikipedia and add in my own comments. As I say, the movie is fantastic. Not entirely accurate, but a great movie, and the history is also jolly interesting. But again, there's plenty of military podcasts out there, so I'm always a bit loath to touch on it beyond here's a quick Wikipedia article. A Company were dropped away from the target of Arnhem Bridge and had to go through Arnhem. The streets were blocked by German forces. Digby led his men through the back gardens of nearby houses instead of attempting to advance through the streets, and thus avoided the Germans. Digby and A Company managed to travel 8 miles in 7 hours, whilst also taking prisoner 150 German soldiers, including members of the SS. During the battle, Digby wore his maroon beret instead of a helmet and waved his umbrella while walking about the defences despite heavy mortar fire. When the Germans started using tanks to cross the bridge, Digby led a bayonet charge against them, wearing a bowler hat. He later disabled a German armoured car with his umbrella, incapacitating the driver by shooting the umbrella through the car's observational slit and poking the driver in the eye. Digby then noticed the chaplain, pinned down by enemy fire while trying to cross the street to get to the wounded soldiers. Digby got to him and said, "Don't worry about the bullets. I have an umbrella." He then escorted the chaplain across the street under his umbrella. When he returned to the front line, one of his fellow officers said about his umbrella that thing won't do you any good, to which Digby replied, "Oh my goodness, Pat, but what if it rains?" Digby was later injured by shrapnel, which also cut open the rear of his trousers, but continued to fight until A Company had run out of ammunition. Despite the radios being unreliable, as Digby had predicted, and the bugle calls being used most in the battle, the message "out of ammo, God save the King" was radioed out before Digby was captured. So there we go. I think that's the most famous umbrella. Okay, the third topic was just suggested by David Nix by email, and if you want to email me, by the way, that's albionneverdies@gmail.com. And David suggested that I cover the upper class. I find this also another challenging topic, one that's been rolling in my mind. It is a sociological term, something that people debate, sometimes quite angrily, in the UK, the class system. So again, I just kind of thought I'd trot along to the Encyclopaedia Britannica and see what they had to say. And they say, the upper class in modern capitalist societies is often distinguished by the possession of largely inherited wealth. The ownership of large amounts of property and the income derived from it confer many advantages upon the members of the upper class. They are able to develop a distinctive style of life based on extensive cultural pursuits and leisure activities to exert a considerable influence on economic policy and political decisions, and procure for their children a superior education and economic opportunities that help to perpetuate family wealth. That seems a fairly solid definition. It confers many advantages upon them. Okay, a distinctive style of life based on extensive cultural pursuits. But do they do podcasts? By comparison, the middle class may be said to include the middle and upper levels of clerical workers, those engaged in technical and professional occupations, supervisors and managers, and such self-employed workers as small-scale shopkeepers, business persons and farmers. At the top, wealthy professionals or managers in large corporations, the middle class merges into the upper class, while at the bottom, routine and poorly paid jobs and sales, distribution and transport, it merges into the working class. As Tony Blair said, we're all middle class now. And finally, historically, the principal contrast with the upper class in industrial societies was provided by the working class, which traditionally consisted of manual workers in the extractive and manufacturing industries. Given the vast expansion of the service sector in the world's most advanced economies, it has been necessary to broaden this definition to include in the working class those persons who hold low-paying, low-skilled, non-unionized jobs such as industries, food service and retail sales. There are considerable differences within the working class, however, and a useful distinction exists between skilled, semi-skilled and unskilled workers that broadly corresponds to differences in income level. And I do find that interesting. In the UK, there may not necessarily be a direct correlation between your wealth and your class. I'd say in the US it tends to be much more direct. To my observation, China can depend on some of your social connections, whilst in the Middle East very much depending on your social connections. The UK is kind of between the US and Asia on this. But of course, as difficult, I would say, as it is to nail down any facts, and people do get very, very angry about these facts, I think it's also very interesting and very easy to lean into just portrayal, like media portrayal. I find it fascinating that Roger Moore always did a fantastic aristocrat when he was given the chance. So in The Persuaders, he was Lord Brett Sinclair, and of course in the Bond films and A View to a Kill, he is James St. John Smythe, and he was very, very good at laying on aristocratic airs. And of course, in real life, he was a policeman's son. He has very humble origins, but was brilliant at doing this. Equally, Michael Caine in Zulu. Allegedly, he just watched lots and lots and lots of videos of Prince Philip, and that he channeled that. But of course, he played aristocrats in, say, in Kingsman. He plays an aristocratic chap in Tenet. He's the guy who's like, if you're going to go around claiming to be a billionaire, then Brooks Brothers won't cut it. Advising someone a better tailor than Brooks Brothers. But he does brilliantly with these aristocratic roles. And again, his father was a fish market porter. So I found it very, very interesting. Some of the best actors, because there's no shortage of people who go to expensive schools to become actors now. But the best of them often seem to be from the opposite end of the social spectrum. And Billy Connolly, the Scottish comedian, once did a piece about a pub that was in the middle of a town with 3 different areas, and there were aristocrats, working classes, and middle class people. And he was saying that it was interesting to see the interaction between them, because of course, the upper classes don't need to worry about social status. The working classes don't really about social status. They don't have it. It's only the middle class who worry about, say, house prices, or doing the right thing, or saying the right thing at all times, or appearing professional, or whatever. So often the upper classes and the lower classes would get on best. This actually coincides with some of my own observation that I've been to all 4 types of schools in England. I've been to a state school, a Church of England school, a public school, and a grammar school. And these are the 4 mainstream types of schools. There are other very peculiar types of schools. I've been to another peculiar type as well, but these are the 4 mainstream types, and they do attract different types. And I would agree that the very upper classes and the very lower classes do have a certain energy, whether it's strange pets, strange adventures, occasional odd second languages, in the way that the middle class might worry more about being a bit more normal. Equally, the middle class might not want to be too adventurous, whereas the upper classes might do so because it's lively and interesting, and the lower class might do so because why not? One thing that I would say is particularly strong with the upper class is the idea of service. Not to say it doesn't exist elsewhere, but it is particularly strong, and one of the poignant illustrations of that is, of course, in the First World War, Eton. Simply the school Eton lost 1,157 of its old boys, and it's estimated that in the First World War overall, 35,000 ex-public school boys were killed during the First World War. I should say, for American listeners, public schools are what you call private schools, because public schools are owned by a member of the public. So that gave those from the wealthier schools a casualty rate between 18 and 20%, compared to those who enlisted. The national average was between 10 and 11. So they did lead from the front. Anyway, I think that's also particularly alluded to in the movie Kingsman. But it is a rich topic, the British class system. And there's the 2 Ronnies. When I asked previously about the best double acts in British TV history, quite a lot of people said the 2 Ronnies, and they did a sketch including John Cleese, and they had the upper class man saying, I like to take a bit of work home because it encourages the middle managers, and then it has the professional type, the middle class man saying, well, I have to take home quite a bit of work and work an hour or 2 in the evening at home just because I need to keep my place and stay competitive. And then there's the working class man saying, oh, I take some of my work home, it does wonders for the roses. And as I say, it fills out British film and TV. I think The Guardian talked about this. 2019. Stuart Jeffries with an article titled "Never Mind the Forlocks: Why Film Should Give Up Its Obsession with the Upper Class," and he argued foreign markets demand that Britain serve itself up on screen as something it never was. Nobody wants British cars, British computers, or British carrots, but everyone wants a bit of posh, and that's why Meghan married Harry. We manufacture our past, package it up in cinema and TV, and flog it abroad, and then that image gets reflected back and distorts us even more. And he's arguing that it becomes a part of social control, that it's the upper class keeping us all in their place because we keep making moves about it, and that we keep making moves about it because people overseas really want it. Well, as I say, a difficult topic to get anything really solid on, but I'm very glad to have touched on it a little, so thank you very much to David Nix for suggesting that I study the upper class. I suppose one thing, the king is obviously upper class, and I said they don't need to worry about their status. He has a strong belief in reusing stuff, buying things that will last forever. So he was wearing a suit which had a hole or 2 worn in the pocket, I think, in the suit jacket pocket, and so he had it sewn up. It's patched up, so the king wears a patched up suit, which I think many middle class people would be very, very wary of having patched up clothing, but the king is very happy to lead by example. Anyway, thank you very much to David Nix, and thank you very much to Kyle for the suggestion of Umbrella, and thank you to both of you for the suggestion of Underground. This is Thomas from British Culture Albion Never Dies, exploring what is Britishness. If you have any more ideas for what you could stand for, or if you want to move on to the next letter, there's no limits. I'm at the end of the alphabet now. U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. If you have any suggestions, email me at albionneverdies@gmail.com, or you can just hunt me down on Instagram. I am Fleming Never Dies over there. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.